Welcome back to Hoochos. Today on Hoochos, I'm going to be showing you how to set up and grow these. These are hydroponic tomatoes grown in the Kratky style of hydroponics, which means set and forget, passive and powerless hydroponics. This technique represents a productive and easy way for people to enter into the hydroponic gardening space. So here on Hoochos, we try and balance the cheapest and most convenient methods of gardening with the most productive methods of gardening. And hitting the sweet spot for all of those points is Kratky's hydroponic method of gardening. Not only is it easy, simple and cheap, but it is extremely productive. Now, it's all well and good for me to set up a system like this Beto bucket hydroponic system and plug it into a wall, turn on the water and say emulate this, but not all of you may have access to Beto buckets, irrigation tubing, or even electricity. So what I'm trying to do with this system is I'm trying to give you an option so that you don't need any of this stuff. All you need is a container that you can cover and drop a plant into, within which that plant can then grow into hydroponic nutrient and provide you with food for your family. Now, it almost sounds too good to be true, but the method works. We saw it in my last Kratky video where we had some really impressive roots, where we had some really impressive results. But I think that my last two Kratky videos have been misleading in the sense that they've both been under lights. You do not need to have a Kratky hydroponic system, or any hydroponic system for that matter, under LED lights. We can do it outdoors, and it doesn't just need to be lettuce. We can grow any plant in any container, given that you take into consideration the water and nutrient requirements of that plant. So with that in mind, let's choose our containers. These are the containers that I'll be using today. These are a 65-litre hole-free storage container. Now, they are recycled plastic. If you have a problem with recycled plastic, just find food-grade containers that suit your preference. All pots are made of recycled plastic, and we are just growing plants. The edible parts of the plants won't be touching this plastic. So suit yourself, do what you think is right. I will be growing my plants in these recycled tubs. The reason I have gone for 65-litre containers is because it's the largest container I could find. They are rigid as well, and it will help me in making what will be a lid and base for the plants to sit upon. You can use square tubs with lids if you like. I just like the idea of a nice sturdy bucket, because the forces are even on all sides of a circle, and that will mean that this isn't going to warp, and it will provide a nice solid base for my plant. For the lids, I'll just be using some ply that I have left over from doing the studio, and I'll be cutting it out with a jigsaw. Now, if you don't want to do this part, just buy a container that already has a lid, and then you will not need to make lids. And there's our lid. While we're here, we're going to cut some holes. I'm going to do two experiments in this Kratky grow. So in Kratky's journal article, he says that you need between 25 and 40 litres to grow 1 kilogram of fruit on a tomato plant. So I'm just going to do one tomato plant per bucket. I'm going to do two methods. We're going to do a 42mm hole for one of them, which I actually have a plan from an idea that I got in my last Kratky video, where the esky actually spread the roots for me. I'm going to put a 42mm hole in two of them, and then I'm also going to put a hole for a net pot, 150mm net pot for the other two, and we'll see the difference between the two methods. Find the center. Very nice. This is something you definitely don't particularly need to do. You can cover this in plastic or something if you want to, but I want to sterilize it as well as waterproof it. So I'm actually going to burn these pieces of wood. And for the 42mm lids, there is actually one extra step I'm going to take. The way that I'm going to set those lids up is so that when we place our lid above the container, below the lid hanging, I'm going to have these saucers. These saucers are going to be filled with growing media. Whatever growing media you like, however, I'm going to opt for probably a cocoa mix, maybe cocoa perlite, maybe just cocoa. This is going to allow the roots, as they grow down into this container, whilst the nutrient solution is still above the rim of this saucer, the roots are going to expand out, and then once the water drops below this saucer, they will then shoot down. This is going to allow the roots to utilize all of the space in the container rather than just forming underneath in a cone coming out from our net pot. So I'm hoping here that we get an entire container of roots rather than just a column of roots. We'll see how this pans out at the end of the grow. So I'll just put some holes in our saucer so that the water can enter and the roots can exit the saucer. And there it is. I'm now going to fill this up with grow media. We can flip it upside down onto our lid. We can attach it with screws into the lid. And this is just a hydroponic grade of cocoa. I'm just doing this to give the roots something to spread along. And then after the nutrient solution drops below this, this will do absolutely nothing for the plant. Then we're going to flip this upside down and do the exact same. Now, some people might say this isn't true Kratky. Probably right. I don't think we'll need too many screws. I'll probably do 6. Now, if you wanted a reusable substrate, you might be able to use clay balls instead, and then you could reuse this indefinitely, and you could just reset it every time you lay down a new plant. And then, look at that. There's our lid ready to plant into. And we can just top it up with cocoa, like that. And I'm going to do another one of those. And that is all the lids for all the containers made. Now I just have to fill up the nutrients. Now I'm actually not going to be mixing nutrients this time. There's plenty of videos that I've got on how to mix nutrients. I'm just going to be filling these 4 containers up with the nutrients that I have in my IBC, which is a 1,000 litre nutrient reservoir. It is 2.4 EC and 6 pH. Campbell's Diamond Spec T hydroponic nutrient that I've pre-mixed and runs all of the systems in my greenhouse. So I'm now going to fill it up with a hose with hydroponic nutrient, and then we can start planting our plants. And while that's filling, I can show you what I'm going to do with the net basket tops. Literally all I'm doing is filling these up with clay balls, like so, and then I'll plant directly into these with my ready to go tomato seedlings, which I started in my DIY propagation shelving system, but they have been out in the greenhouse for a little bit because they got a bit big and they are actually thriving. Look at those. They are fantastic seedlings. So I'm going to give these clay balls a bit of a rinse, and then once we've filled our buckets, we can pop our tops on and start planting. It's actually the quiet times between takes where I'm just sitting in the garden appreciating the running water and the plants, and looking forward to filming the next segment that I get all my enjoyment. In fact, the whole process is enjoyment, but when you're in a flow state doing the videos, time passes so quickly, but it's nice to just sit back and take it all in. The sun's setting, the insects are out, it's beautiful temperature, summer's coming, and here they are. Chaos 1 and Chaos 2. Hi, what are you guys up to? You could sense the peace and you wanted to come disrupt. I think I'm gonna make a cup of tea. Come on. Okay, so theoretically this should all be the same water, so we should get a nice across the board. The pH is 5.7 and the millisiemens 2.41. Okay, so while that last one fills up, we're going to plant out the other 3. So I'm just going to lay over the tops of our buckets like so. So for the first 2 with our net pots, we're just going to drop a net pot in with half of our hydrogen already filled. This is probably going to overflow it some, like so. And then we can just drop in our plants. Just gonna empty our water a little bit. We can choose our tomatoes, 1, and fill around. And with these ones, we're just gonna drop the top on, let the water fill into the base, and you can see there the water is in the cocoa, and we're just going to drop our seedling straight through the hole. And into that hole, I'm just gonna start packing cocoa because it's a bit sparse in there. And I'll just drop that in the hole as well. And I'll just pack around that as well. And that's a Kratky setup. I'm now gonna set up the time-lapse cameras and we'll see how they grow. And will you have a look at that result? Now there are a couple of problems which I'll outline, but I am overall really impressed with the way that this technique handled large plants like tomatoes. These large seedlings that I started within this Kratky system were started on the 17th of November, and it is now the 17th of January. That means that these plants have taken exactly 2 months to grow. In my experience, that is a really quick tomato grow. All of our plants have fruit on them and are about to start ripening, and they're all extremely healthy. Now, it's not really a fair comparison between the two different techniques, the one that spreads the roots and the one that doesn't, because they are different varieties of tomatoes, which I did not realize at the time. We've got 3 heirloom varieties that way, and we've got a more traditional store tomato here. I believe these are both Rogue de Marmade, and I've got a banana tomato at the end. In a minute, I'm going to pull out all of the tomatoes and we'll have a look at their root systems. So first, I just want to discuss the Kratky technique, how it works and why it works. Kratky Hydroponics is based on the premise that the plant will grow roots into a hydroponic nutrient and utilize the nutrient as it grows. As the nutrient is utilized, as we can see in the time lapse of the roots in our system, the nutrient level drops and the plant's roots chase the nutrient down, falling with gravity. Now, a major consideration in hydroponic systems is oxygen. The Kratky system would seem counterintuitive because you would think that sitting water didn't contain much oxygen. The way that this system actually provides oxygen to the plants is that the roots, once they are exposed to the air above the nutrient solution, which is actually a moist air environment, so the roots are able to extract oxygen from the air as the water and nutrient level drops. This creates a dual root zone in which the top half of the roots is used for the plants to breathe, especially the roots just above the water where there is a moist air zone, and the roots below the water level are what we call hydroponic roots, which are used to draw up water and nutrients. Okay, so let's now have a look at all the other roots and compare the two techniques. So these are the two with the net basket. I'm just going to pull it up and show you the roots. And as you can see, they kind of go down in a column, but they have spread out a little. So I'm actually not too unhappy with this technique. It doesn't seem to have inhibited the plant growth at all. Lift up the next one. There we go. And this one's actually used notably less water than the last one, which is interesting, as the other one actually has a heavier set of fruit. So as you can see, there's about 3 or 4 inches of water in that one, and in this bucket we have way more. So in this bucket we're looking at like 6 inches of water. Big difference in how much those two plants utilize the nutrient, and you can see it in the growth of the plant and the fruit set. This one has a ton of fruit all over it, whereas I've only got a fruit, 2 large fruit on this heirloom variety. And now the ones I'm really interested in. This is the technique that had the tray underneath with the cocoa, allowing the roots to spread out and drop down. So as we lift these guys, well, that one actually didn't really utilize the whole of that tray, which is interesting. We've got about 4 inches of liquid left in there. And remember, these are 65-litre tubs. There's about 15 litres left. Now, this is the largest plant. I expect it to have the largest roots and also to have used the most water. So let's lift it up. Oh yeah, look at that. It's taken up basically the whole container. But this is what I wanted to happen. You can see how the roots are holding the lower roots out and allowing them to use up the nutrient across a larger surface area on the water. And I'd actually argue, you can see the size of the roots, it directly correlates to the size of the plant, because more roots equals more fruits. When you can get this method to work, I do think this is a good method. However, I also think that you can achieve this method by just putting maybe some kind of netting over the top of the net basket that comes out to each side rather than having to go through all of this. So there are two major issues with this grow. The banana tomato at the end has blossom end rot, and that is a calcium deficiency within the nutrient solution. So the way that I would fix this is that I would add in extra calcium to the nutrient or just change the nutrient completely. The second problem I've been having is a rodent problem. As the summer winds up, everything is drying out and there's not much food around the greenhouse in the bush, so they're all coming to the greenhouse and they've been eating my tomatoes. And I don't like to use rodent bait because I have the two dogs and I love them a lot, and I do not want to risk their lives for the sake of my greenhouse. I have been trapping them, but there's only so much you can do, and they've been getting into the greenhouse and decimating not just these tomatoes, but also my tomatoes in the Beto bucket system. Although they seem to be leaving the jalapenos alone, and you can do as much as you like to keep out pests with shade cloth and preventative barriers, but some are always going to get in. Where we would go from here with these systems is you would either drain the nutrient out and top it up halfway so that you're leaving some of the roots exposed and continue doing this for the lifetime of the plant, or we could add in a float valve. And this is the style of float valve you would use. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can get these. And the reason we would use these is because we don't want to use the traditional ball float style within a Kratky system, because the roots can actually take over the ball and hold it down, causing the nutrient solution that's coming in to perpetually fill and overflow. This is protected. The float is within this protective case, and you would install it onto a poly riser like this, and then we could then have it dropped down into our Kratky system. You just make sure that you purchase the riser that's the appropriate height for the system, and then you would drill a hole within the top of your Kratky system and attach it to a reservoir which is above the Kratky system, and this would enable a permanent refilling of your Kratky hydroponic system. This is the more complex way of keeping them filled up, and in the future I'll be exploring infinite Kratky with you in more depth. Obviously you can get away without the float valve just by topping up manually, and that is absolutely fine if you choose that option. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hoochos. Happy hydroponicking, and I'll see you next time on Hoochos.